My name is Margaret. I'm from Lincoln. I've only been a volunteer for 3 months, and I started with Monks Road Working Men's Club. I asked them if I could have a Monday morning bingo session with the old people. They said yes, go with it. I have 58 to 63 people go to this. They are lonely pensioners. And since then, I've met Marika, and she's been absolutely wonderful. This bingo club now, I've got the funding to go into being a lunch club. I've also, with the help of Marika, get a international street party together that we have the funding for. It's going to happen in August. I can't thank Micah enough. I'm thankful for what she's done, because I know Lincoln is going to be a better place with us working together in the future.
My name is Innocent, and I work in Wellingborough in Croyland Ward. I've been a community organizer for the last five months, and one day I was door knocking in the community, and I spoke to people, and one of the things that was coming up was that there used to be a GP practice in the area that was shut down. So it means that people are now going to other areas in the community to access the healthcare and support. And while I was talking to the residents, they were talking about how we can bring up something that we can see if we can restore back something that they can access, especially the elderly in the community. And as we were talking about it, we've set up a group where we are looking at putting up something that we can pressure in, and with the support with the local pharmacy and other local businesses in the area, to see what we can do to make sure that something happens, people can have access to health care that they are entitled to in the community without struggling to go to other areas, and also causing long queues, and the appointment times are more than 2 weeks if one needs an appointment because of the numbers that are flooding just small areas.
Hi, I'm Katrina, a trainee community organiser working in Devizes, Wiltshire. I started knocking on doors in a social housing estate. Those residents didn't feel they belonged or they were part of the community. They wanted to be involved and they wanted to attend council meetings. They didn't have the confidence. I spoke with Jenna, who she really wanted to get involved, so I asked what she thought and the other residents wanted to do. They invited the councillors to come to their house and had a meeting with them and other wealthy residents within the local area. From there, they had good discussions about what they would like to do and where they would like to go within the community and be involved. Since then, the residents attend council meetings, which they never did before. Not only that, Jenna is working with the council and feeding back from the residents of the social housing estate, and it's working really well. Those residents now feel they are a part of that community.
Hello, my name is Dave, and I'm a community organiser on Portland and Dorset. In January, at the height of a storm, there was an even bigger storm brewing on Portland. I attended a meeting on a Tuesday night, a community meeting, and got talking to a councillor who said to me, "Oh, have you heard about the vote on Wednesday night at the council meeting? They're proposing to put up the precept from £15 to £150. So I did a bit of calculating and sort of thought, wow, that sounds like a large rise. It was 1,000% rise. So we set about mobilising our network and got 40 people to attend the council meeting the next night. The 1,000% precept rise was put through. Over the next few weeks, we used digital organising as well as more traditional neighbourhood campaigning, and we got a petition signed by over 3,500 registered voters on Portland, with a population of 12,000 people, against the precept rise. The council agreed to having a information evening where they were going to speak to the community. Over 650 people turned up to the meeting, and the council reversed their decision on the 1,000% precept rise and settled on a much more satisfactory 1.99% rise. It reached the national press, and we had comment from MP Eric Pickles and different people. The result now is a fully engaged council that listens to its community first.
Hi, my name's Emma and I'm a community organiser in Morton on the Wirral. We started door knocking in a local area and it became really obvious that locals were very frustrated that the community centre central to their estate was never open and always closed. Through working and talking to residents, we brought them together and did a mass listen. From that, they started action, came together and started a fund day to show the importance and how much they wanted this centre. Since then, they are now challenging the local council to change their decision and give them the keys with the support of their local councillors behind them, with a massive fund day on the 1st of August.
Hello, my name is Alison. I'm from Booth Town, which is a small place on the outskirts of Halifax in West Yorkshire. So I'm a community organiser there. The area is literally two areas. It's a conservation, beautiful Victorian conservation area, and a bank of social housing around it. And it's literally divided by a wall in the middle. So I went to the social housing first, because they have a massive drug problem there, antisocial behaviour, and a huge police presence that is causing a lot of problems. And I went to the very bottom of one of the crescents, and I wanted to tell you about a guy called Dean that I met. And Dean simply wanted to grow a garden at the back of the flats where he was living, and he wanted everybody in his community involved. So I said, will you come out listening to me with the rest of your neighbours and tell them about this fantastic garden you want to grow? And he was up for it. So we went and listened, and we told him about the garden. But Pennine Housing, who own the housing, they only have one garden manager for the whole of Calderdale to start these gardens. So it was impossible to actually get this garden started. So with my help, we negotiated with local people. We got a local business to donate materials for the garden, fencing, something to buy, to build a shed to put the tools in. So the garden gets started. And we start inviting neighbours. Neighbours start coming down to see what's going on, because nothing like this has ever happened to them before. And the police also get interested. Instead of coming in to sort ASBOs out, they come in to see what the garden's doing. And with a recent drug bust, we've got plenty of soil and growing materials. So it gets donated to the garden project. So the garden is now thriving and everybody's loving it because all this fantastic stuff's being donated there. But something happens. Dean is applying for work, but he gets sanctioned. So not once, but twice in 4 months. So if any of you don't know what sanctioning is, that's where your benefit gets completely cut. Through no fault of his own, he wasn't offered the hours that he was promised, and he was going to be working for less than his benefit, so there wasn't any point in him doing it. So this is now a guy that's surviving. You know, he's literally hand to mouth. So the garden now becomes a way of him surviving. The food bank is on the other side of town. He's never been to anything like this before, and he's too embarrassed, and to go to the other side of town is quite a big deal. So he starts living on his plot. And he decides that this is probably quite a good idea for the rest of the people who are sanctioned in the area, that they should be helping to grow the food and surviving as well. So he realises he probably needs to know a little bit more about growing. So we talk about doing a horticultural course. And sure enough, there is one in the area. There's a big community parks in our area, and they have a big area called Manor Heath, and we grow everything for the local garden. So he goes up there, and he's been working there for the last 3 months, and he's using the plot now as his homework. He comes home and he learns how to grow, and he's starting to show people who are around. So this now is a guy who he's got lots of confidence. He knows how to grow, and he's helping people around him as well. So that's just a great way of making a very good friend and somebody who's got a future. Thanks.
Hi there, my name is Naeem and I'm a volunteer. Basically, loads of young people in my area is really deprived. I'm from Rochdale, and they've been doing drug dealing, they've been a lot of antisocial behaviour. So basically we got together, we made a fun fair, we got a lot of activities, we made a youth club, to get them involved. But at the same time, all the elder people, they felt left out. So we thought, why not get everyone together? So we did a big community barbecue. There's loads of other fun fairs, there's loads of melas, all that. So we thought we'd get everyone involved. With everyone, you can make a better change.
Hello, my name is Oscar and I'm a volunteer from Reading. I identified the problem in my community, which was a lot of youth being involved in gang activity and antisocial behaviour. And as someone who used to be part of the problem, I knew what it took for me to get out of the cycle, and sport for me was something that really helped me gain discipline. So as one of my actions, I decided to get in touch with ITV Fixers and make a digital campaign. We actually featured on ITV and had a community screening in my community to actually raise awareness on how sport can be used to combat antisocial behaviour. But the real solution came when I met my CEO, together we devised a strategy to go and knock on Power's door, and I approached the Reading Sports Committee because I wanted to be in a position to help other youth who was in a similar background gain some funding so that they could continue to further themselves in sport. So with my CEO, I actually managed to get in a position to be able to nominate and to bring people who thought they were disconnected from people of power to be in a position to be funded and gain support so that they can continue doing sport and continue to get out of the cycle that they were in. So that's my story.
Hi, my name's Terry Overland. I'm a senior community organiser based in Telford. I've been listening and door knocking on an estate where I worked, and I got a group of volunteer mums from the flats, and we knocked on 340 doors in 2 weeks to find out that 67% of the residents bought nappies. We decided to have a bulk buy as a community, and through the listings we found an elderly gentleman called Bill. Now, Bill was a grandfather to everybody on the estate. He had a house on the estate, but he chose to live in the park on a bench. They then came together, and now Bill's house is the best looking house in the area. His garden is spotless. But by coming together, he now supplies the whole 340 flats with nappies, potatoes, and 19 other products that they use every single day to save money. Bill is 90. He now lives in his home. His home is clean, and so is he. He used to spend 4 to 5 days a week, 3 to 4 hours a day, sitting in a doctor's surgery. It was warm, and they gave him a cup of tea. Over the last year, he has a reason to get up in the morning. He is clean. The community is his day. Bill is my inspiration.
And you, Terry, and you, all of you, are all of our inspiration. That's just 10 out of thousands of stories. Now, we asked you all to think about what your proudest moment in community organising has been. So just to imagine that. And I'm going to ask you, if your proudest moment reflects one of the 4 categories of the Big Lottery Fund's new conversation about their future, those categories are vibrant communities where people make the most of their strengths and talents, addressing disadvantage to support people living in poverty to achieve a better quality of life, working together to make a difference, or strengthening the voluntary, community and social enterprise sector. So if your proudest moment reflects any of those categories, I'd like you to stand up, please. So now we're going to see what it would be like and whether Big Lottery could ever fulfil any of that work without you. So can I ask you to leave the tent, please? Or anybody who is standing up, whose proudest moment reflects one of those categories. Thank you. Let's see what it would be like to lose the organisers. you shouldn't be bereft for much longer. Shout out your talents. Shout out your talents and your strengths. All at once. All at once. Shout out. Shout out. Shout out. Woo! Well done. And you, Terry, and you, all of you, are all of our inspiration. That's just 10 out of thousands of stories. Now, we asked you all to think about what your proudest moment in community organising has been. So just to imagine that. And I'm going to ask you, if your proudest moment reflects one of the 4 categories of the Big Lottery Fund's new conversation about their future, those categories are vibrant communities where people make the most of their strengths and talents, addressing disadvantage to support people living in poverty to achieve a better quality of life, working together to make a difference, or strengthening the voluntary, community and social enterprise sector. So if your proudest moment reflects any of those categories, I'd like you to stand up, please. So now we're going to see what it would be like and whether Big Lottery could ever fulfil any of that work without you. So can I ask you to leave the tent, please? Anybody who is standing up, whose proudest moment reflects one of those categories. Thank you. Let's see what it would be like to lose the organisers. So you shouldn't be bereft for much longer. Shout out your talents. Shout out your talents and your strengths. All at once. All at once. Shout out. Shout out. Shout out. Woo! Well done. A chaos of talents has just arrived. You've all found your strengths and talents, and these are the strengths and talents that are locked away in communities but unleashed by community organisers and voluntary community organisers. If we could multiply that by 1,000-fold in every neighbourhood and then across the country, what would that do? That is what you're doing. There is a resource in you and in your neighbourhoods that no government and no funder could ever dream of, except with you. Now, we're going to hear now some testimonials of what the impact has been on you. We've got 4 people, and I'd like to invite them to come up to the front. I hope they're all here. Stephen? Stephen, brilliant. And Shelton. And Emily, brilliant. And Katie, fantastic.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Stephen Doig. 6 years ago, my life changed forever. I went upstairs and found my son hanging from his bed. For 3 years, I locked myself away. Didn't come out the house, wouldn't go shopping with the missus. And then suddenly, anybody ever had an annoying friend, somebody that you love but persistently annoys you. And he says, want to get into this community organising? I was like, not interested, mate. Month down the line, took me to Sneinton Alchemy. Boy, what a transformation. People that were warming to me and actually wanting to listen to my problems. Not getting to me to do anything, just wanting to listen to my problems. A year on now, I run a group called Growing Spaces. I run the Saturday Hub Cafe, and end of next month we open up the Growing Spaces Community Kitchen. So So, if it wasn't for community organising, I probably wouldn't be here right now. Through their re-education, I've now got certain certificates, and I'm now doing my Petals course. But that's all good. But what community organising has done for me is given me my dignity back, my self-respect, and the will to love again. Because for 3 years, I didn't love. You know, and in growing spaces, it's fun and games. We don't take life too serious, but we've got a little motto, or a little joke you could say, and it's, a chicken gets on a bus, goes to sit down. The chicken goes move. Sorry, the cow goes move. The chicken goes, fuck off! Thank you, guys.
Yeah, hi. My name's Shelton Graham from Cohort 9, based in London. Talking from a trainee's point of view, like I didn't have like a real academic background, and like being in this position, it's given me like some useful skills and knowledge that parts of my community benefited from, but not all of the community actually benefited from the skills. It's been a good year for my personal development and like for me, but not such for the community. The community's got like real complex issues that can't be solved in a duration of a year or two. It needs more time so we can have real impact on the community themselves. More support would be needed for like say the volunteers and things like that. Like from one of my colleagues said to me yesterday that it's like we lead our communities up a mountain and leave them to fend for themselves. It's like they need more resources and more support that actually continue going on to do what they do in the work they do as volunteers. Like the community organising programme has potential to make social change, like, but the impact that we would have on the communities would need more time to actually do that, and it needs to, for sustainability and for there to be a good outcome from that. And I would say that it's important that it continues going on, not just for like CO's sake, but for the community's sake. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a senior organiser in Newton Le Willows in Merseyside. I've made some little notes, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm not going to tell you a sob story. I haven't got a sob story, but I've not had the easiest of lives. And every education establishment and work environment that I was ever in, I was a scapegoat and I was bullied and everything was blamed on me. Before I was an organiser, I used to work for a very large private healthcare company in dementia care as an activities coordinator. And it was there that I sort of got a bit of a taste for the fact that I might be a people person. I bonded really well with the older adults, and I loved speaking to them. I loved hearing their stories, and we would have a little laugh over the things that they would tell us about the old days. But because the environment I worked in, I got very depressed and I was suicidal, and I eventually booked up the courage to leave. But I was convinced then that nowhere else would want me and nobody would ever want to employ me because I'd walked out of a job because I wasn't strong enough. And strangely, I applied to be a community organiser and someone gave me a chance. And it gave me a chance to change and to make a real difference. Sorry, I'm a little bit upset about it. I was the kind of person who never left the house. I was a proper hermit. And I was really meek and I didn't speak to anybody. And going through the process of becoming a trainee organiser and somebody actually wanted to give me a chance to progress, that was a big deal for me. And I think people could agree, people who've trained me on the programme, who've worked with me, would probably consider that I'd been quite verbose and quite confident all my life, when actually it was this programme and the colleagues that I worked with that gave me that opportunity to change and to become a better person. It's not just given me a better chance, but it's given the community that I live and work in a chance to change and to be a different place after the boundary changes in the 70s that really ignited a hatred where I live and work for the local authority. It's given them a chance to find their own identity again, which is a really special thing for me. And as a movement and as people who are drawn towards creating transformation in communities, we need to show people like yourselves who hold power and who hold wealth that this works, because we actually just listen to people and we give them chances to make changes to themselves and to their local communities and to their wider communities. And we forget about the top-down tenders that are offered by most funding organisations who say that you need this, but actually you don't. What you really need to do is listen. So I think if we, as a movement of people, spent a lot less time wondering where our next paycheck would come from and more time knocking on doors and listening to people, we would get a lot more work done in a lot less time. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kate. I represent a host employer organisation called Island Community Action, which is based on Portland in Dorset. The reason we originally got involved in the programme is we could recognise a real opportunity to challenge the apathy that was so prevalent across the island. Giving individuals the opportunity to realise their own potential and to recognise that everyone has something to contribute, which complemented perfectly our existing aims and vision for the island. The impact that Bill and Dave as community organisers had has been significant. They've engaged 56 volunteers over 17 different projects that are showing a real value both on an economic and social level. They've worked across everything from reducing isolation in our community to engaging local people in democracy. The value they've brought to us as an organisation is also immeasurable. The energy and enthusiasm they bring into the office is infectious. They've widened our reach and allowed us to engage with people within our community that we wouldn't have traditionally had contact with. And as a team, there's been able to be a two-way share of our skills, experiences, resource, knowledge, which has made us all become much more effective as an organisation, and we've been able to support them through their training year and beyond. As an organisation, we're now adopting a community organising approach to the way we work across all our existing and future funding new projects, including working in community organiser time into new funding applications. Moving forward, we hope to work with the programme and with the hosts forum to develop a quality mark that will really demonstrate that we are a person-centred organisation. And although it's been a huge commitment of time and energy to continue employing our community organisers, we feel that it was worth it because they filled gaps within our...
How much noise do you think you're making in this village? There are houses here. You just keep the noise down, please.
Apologies. As the room is so there's been a huge commitment. We feel that they've filled some gaps that we had within our existing provision, and they've allowed us to make offer a much more holistic package to our communities. But volunteering is not free. It needs long-term investment so that we're able to grow and retain our existing community organisers and the movement. So that they can make a huge saving for statutory sector and so that they can make real change for individuals and communities.
So you've heard from a volunteer, you've heard from a trainee, you've heard from a graduate organiser and from a host, and also from a local resident. Although, to be honest, that wasn't part of the play. But never mind, we have to listen when we have to listen. So we kind of want to hear from you, although not long speeches. What we want to ask you for is to work with us in the future. So we've got two pledges here. One each, one for Tony and one for Nick. We could probably make some for locality too, but maybe we'll do that on another day. So we're asking you, Tony, will you work with us to ensure that the training of future community organisers is funded in this country in the future? We're not asking you, obviously, to commit any particular money. We're asking you to commit your time and your energy and your credibility to trying to make sure that there are future generations of these people and that it doesn't end in July 2015. Will you work with us on that?
I will.
Will you come and sign it? Come and sign it. I need a pen. I need a pen.
You want me to sign?
Come and sign it. Thank you. A bigger pen. Can we have a bigger pen so that we
Who's got a big pen?
No, for sure. That's not a very big pen. Anyone got a bigger pen? Come on, organisers.
There's one, there's one.
Thank you, Micah. Brilliant. Whoops. I'm sorry. There we go. It's going to sign it in red. So Woohoo!
How could I not be persuaded? I'm a believer, but you guys are really good at listening. You've really got to make yourself heard now. And now's your moment, and now is the moment to get the message that we've heard in the marquee heard elsewhere. So you become mainstream, and so we can, and others can, give you the support that's necessary for the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. And Nick, we've got a special question for you. Will you work cross-party to try to establish a long-term legacy for community organising training in this country? And I should say that Nick, as an opposition MP, worked cross-party to get the Sustainable Communities Act through, so he's got track record of being able to do this. Will you do this for us? Will you work with us?
Of course.
Sign it in. Thank you. It's got the pen, it's all right, it's got a pen.
I'll be cross-party and sign it in red. In blood.
Okay, so you're going to hear from Nick shortly. I just want to say one more thing about him, which those of you who were at, I think it was cohort 8 graduation or 6 or something, I can't remember, it all comes round so fast, will have heard me say before. Nick Hurd is a 4th generation MP, so it goes back quite a long way in his family. And when I was Google stalking him a little while ago, a few years ago, I found a story that I really liked, which was his father, Douglas Hurd, was writing about Douglas's own grandfather, Lord Percy or Sir Percy Hurd. Percy Hurd was also an MP, but Douglas said he wasn't really much of a politician. He used to go around the county telling funny stories. And I thought, that is kind of what Nick does. He goes around the country telling funny stories, and the way he gets to do that is because he comes around the country listening. Not all the stories are funny that he hears, but he comes round and he listens. He has gone out since the very beginning of this programme. Every time he visits community organisers, he goes out with them. He doesn't sit in a little room and kind of ask them a few questions and then disappear. He goes out. He wants to meet their communities as well as them. And I think we couldn't have asked for a better protector of this programme. So he doesn't only go out into neighbourhoods with organisers, he also protects us from the rest of government. So when in the early years other bits of government said, oh great, we're going to have 500 new government workers who can all go out and spread the messages of this government, he and his team said, no, that is not what they're for. They're working in communities. And I know that you would want him to say that, and that has been what he has said all the way through. So now let's hear from him. You're going to give us a 10 minutes or so speech, or whatever, and then some questions.
I wouldn't do that to you.
Nick Hurd.
Can you hear me at the back? Wow. Wow. Jess has been nagging me for some time to come to an action camp, and now I know why. I haven't been able to up till now, but as Jess said, I've made a point of trying to visit many of you in the communities that you're working, because I want to see your areas, I want to hear the listening programme, I want to talk to people that you've moved and inspired. But wow. You're amazing. When when a group of us sat around a table in 2007 or 8 or whenever it was and talked about the need for a program like this and how it might work. I don't think I ever imagined I would be standing in a marquee outside Stafford looking at such a room of fantastically diverse, passionate people on this scale. It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't think I even, sick with optimism as I was then, could have imagined we could have got so far, Jess. It's incredible. How many of you here from the first 5 cohorts, let's say? Congratulations. How many of you here are under 35 years of age? Yeah. It's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, you're a movement now. You're moving and you're strong and incredibly proud of you, really. I thought you were needed for a very simple reason. I think politics is in serious trouble in this country, and there are far too many communities where people aren't seeing the change they want, and we had to do something different. And the whole community organising programme is based on one very, very strong belief that in every community in the country there are people who care, who want to be part of a strong community, would like the chance to be part of something if they got asked in the right way and if they felt that something was happening, that other people were doing it, there were other people out there, they could have the confidence to step up and get involved. That was our belief. We wanted to move away from what seemed to happen in too many communities around the country where well-intentioned people, often with big checkbooks, came and delivered programs to communities. Stuff got done to you, for you. And then the people went and the programs went and not enough stayed. In fact, worse than that, often that just left deeper cynicism. And we had to do something different, and you're the different. We asked ourselves, if we believe that, could we not find people and train people and mobilise and inspire people to go out into communities and listen to people in ways they have not been listened to before? So I'm a politician. I'm about as an establishment figure as you can get. I go around knocking on doors, but when I knock on doors, I'm tending to think, what can I do for this person so that they vote for me? So I just want to end by saying thank you. I want to say thank you to Jess and Locality and Steve here and the team for your passion and your commitment and your perseverance. I want to thank Regenerate for evolving and learning about how this training can be made more and more relevant to you. I want to thank your hosts for believing in you and backing you. But most of all, I want to thank you for all the words on those signs. Your passion, your optimism, your bloody mindedness, your resilience, but most of all because of your faith in your fellow human beings. I was very moved by the stories we heard before about what this programme has done for many of you individually. I bet you have found out stuff about yourself you never knew that you were capable of, because this is a tough programme. This is a very, very tough programme. You're being asked to do a hell of a lot in a very short period of time. And most of you, the vast majority of you, have proven that. So you should be incredibly proud of yourselves. But all we have done in this first administration, this first parliament, is lay the foundations. This is a movement that has got to persevere, because this is about driving the change we want to see in this country, community by community, and that has to be done bottom up. It has to be done through this process, because the old tops-down stuff didn't work. Yeah? And you are part of that, you are the vanguard of that. So you have been magnificent, absolutely magnificent. But our job now is to inspire others, inspire funders, inspire this cross-party support, so this movement moves on from this foundation that you have built so magnificently. Congratulations, and thank you for inviting me.
I'm Rob. I'm working in Reading at the moment. Do you see volunteering as a way to replace paid jobs in the public sector?
Yeah, Freya from Reading. In your role overseeing volunteers, how do you reconcile the tension between recruiting volunteers and benefit cuts if people volunteer too much? Over 16 hours a week, you get sanctioned. I know they're not meant to, but they do, so I don't want to stock answer about, no, they don't do that.
Hello, Nick. I'm Nikki and I'm working in Gloucester. Someone told me this morning that you live fairly close to there, so anytime if you want to come up.
They lied.
Oh, what a shame. I was going to invite you to come and see us. My question is, how do you expect people to volunteer regularly when 0-hour contracts, when you can be called into work at any time, are so badly drawn up?
Three very good questions about volunteering. First off, just let me make one big point about volunteering. Something's happening in this country, and again, you are part of it. Volunteering in this country has risen sharply since 2012, after 5 or 6 years of decline. More and more young people getting involved in volunteering, but across the age groups, more and more people stepping up, getting involved in their community. That's fantastic, and you are part of that. You are part of that very healthy movement. If I remember the questions, let me take them in order. No. Volunteering, replacing public service jobs. We're investing about £40 million in creating new volunteering opportunities. One of our principles is we're not going to invest in anything that is a replacement of a job. What I would say is where there's a situation, for example, where the local authority can see no alternative to closing a library or shutting a service down, and the option is presented to the community, look, the only way we can preserve this service is if it's community-led, if there's a volunteering, if the local community steps up and volunteers to support that service. I don't have a problem with that. I'd rather that happen than the service got lost. In fact, I'd go further. Chances are if you get the community involved who's using the service in running the service, you might get a better service. So with that caveat, my principle and everything we do in the Cabinet Office in terms of our work to support volunteering, we make it very clear we're not going to support stuff that is about replacing jobs. In fact, one of our most successful programs is supporting a hospital in South London that is growing the number of volunteers in the hospital by a factor of, help me out here, by I think almost 10. And that is a process that is union agreed, staff-led. It's just the people in that hospital said, we could do with some more help, this is the work we need. Can you support us to get more volunteers into the hospital? So, long answer to your question, but no, my interest is in supporting volunteering to complement the public sector, because there's a lot that we can do in that area, but not to replace jobs. I think questions 2 and 3 were related to
volunteers and benefits.
Volunteers and benefits. Look, I can't sugar this. We should all want people on benefits to find work and find the satisfaction of being in work. That has to be the priority, and the system has to send a strong signal in that direction. Do I want people to volunteer? Yes, of course I want people to volunteer, not least because the evidence is there that getting involved in well-structured volunteering helps you develop the skills that will make you more employable. So yes, we should be encouraging people to volunteer. Fly goes up the nose. But you can't compromise the basic principle that if you're on benefits, we should be encouraging you, sending you a very strong signal that the absolute priority is to get a job. Yeah? And sometimes these things cut across each other, but the priority is very, very clear indeed.
And the rest of the 0-hour contracts?
0-hour contracts, I expect to see less of them because I think the public pressure and an improving job market will make them less prevalent. But again, the reality is, if you're in a job, your priority is your job. And whatever the conditions of your contract are, those are your priority. And then in those situations, volunteering is what you fit in, which is what the reality is for most people. And there's no point sugaring that, that's just the reality.
Yeah, in the spirit of speaking truth to power, I'm going to aim this in our direction. So, good morning. You're right, honourable community organisers. I just want to thank the programme team for making this weekend, one where we really have looked at what people, power and action means. The Keep Volunteering voluntary pledge that many of you have signed is about that. And there have been many important conversations that have come out of that statement that's been circulated by different organisers. Some people haven't agreed with the statement, people who have been involved in mandatory work placements that, have their stories of transformations, and these people live in communities of long-term unemployment, and it's been a respectful conversation that's been had. But the most common comment, and most people who have been presented it have signed the statement, has been around the passion that comes from within to make change. The free choice to step up and serve our own needs and the needs of our communities, that at a time that they're being devastated by this government's austerity programme. Now, look, as someone who is unpaid for my work for 7 years until this trainee job, I've spent the last few years working with other claimants to fight this onslaught of cuts and sanctions. My personal concern isn't just for a pledge from our opposition, but a pledge from our organisers, especially the volunteer ones. Now, my union when I was unemployed was Unite Community, but however you organise, remember our values of organising the excluded and getting to the root solutions. In the system, the unemployed, like migrants, are being demonised as though they are the cause of low pay, high rents, homelessness and unemployment. We have to support the organisation of those people for secure homes, fair rent and sustainable socially useful work for all that want it, at wages that allow more than just survival. And by the way, it is a full-time job surviving under this system on benefits. A member of our group committed suicide after being cut off by the job centre, having got every bit job that went in the community. He even built the estate that his community now being moved off in our regeneration. But he was evicted by Genesis Housing Association, after he was cut off from his benefits and fell into arrears and loan sharks and this, that and the other. And, he committed suicide. He broke back in and committed suicide because he wasn't even allowed to take his medication, get his medication out. Now, a year later, after a bit of respectful emptiness, that flat was sold for 375 grand. Now, that was the price of his life. And his memory and that of the almost genocidal purging of the sick and disabled by this government is why we organise. So please organise and fight and aim to win. Now, I'm just going to ask, for those people that are voiceless now, whether we can just have a few moments silent, is estimated in the hundreds of thousands the numbers of people that have lost their lives through welfare abolition, and in the several thousand who have taken their own lives. So if we have a few moments before we ask our right honourable guest to respond and say what he has to say about that pledge to keep volunteering voluntary. All right, thank you everyone.
So Robin's just handing in the petition that many of you have signed, and I think the question is, will the Minister sign the pledge to keep volunteering voluntary?
Yeah. Yeah. Robin, I respect your passion on that. I've always been very clear. As this petition says, the clue is in the name. Volunteering is voluntary. People should never be forced to do it. People should be encouraged to do it because of the benefits they get from it. But volunteering is voluntary.
Question 9, at the back.
Hello, I'm Tanya. I'm a community organiser in Cheltenham. And do you feel communities are negatively impacted by community spaces such as libraries being closed?
Yeah, if they're closed and they're lost, yes. Libraries and other spaces where people have a chance to come together, whether it's to learn, to meet other people, to socialise, organise, are fundamental to the kind of community spirit that we're trying to build, which is why we need to fight to keep them open. And I come back to my previous point. If we're in a situation, and there are situations around the country, and probably in many of the areas that you work in, where funding pressures mean that there's a risk of losing centres, losing libraries, losing places which people value, then there are three possible responses. One, you can decide it's all central government's fault and you can campaign against austerity and the whole thing. Secondly, you can campaign locally to the local authority about local priorities, because they have choices. Or thirdly, you can say, as many do, okay, well, if this is the situation and we can't change it by either of those two routes, what's our response as a community? And actually what we're seeing, communities around the country, for example, on libraries, and even in youth services as well, people saying, actually, what can we do as a community? How can we engage the local business community, local voluntary sector, whatever the local authorities could offer? What can we do as a community to put something in place to replace what was there before? And as I said before, some people have a political philosophy that says, actually, that's terrible, that's awful. Actually, what I've observed in many places is that actually what emerges from that process is better than what was there before.
What are the chances of getting between £5,000 and £20,000 to fund every community centre in every ward in England to facilitate people's projects and materialise people's ideas?
You want to ask me or the Big Lottery Fund? Because they got the money. What I would add, sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Paddy Otis.
Paddy, yeah. We've in parallel with this program called this community organiser program, some of you will be aware because you're working with it in your areas. We set up a program called Community First, and that was all again about people power. That was all about saying to residents in the 600 most deprived wards in the country, we think you know best what's needed in that in your area. We'd like you to organise locally, set up a panel of residents, and we will give you X thousand pounds in grants for you to spend over the next 3 years, which you distribute. You just tell us what you're doing, put up a website so everyone can see what you're doing, and you mobilise people, you fund what's necessary in those communities. And a lot of that money has gone to exactly that kind of projects that you're talking about. What's interesting for me is that we matched it. We said it needs to be matched, not necessarily in cash, but in time. And what we found, and what we're really delighted about, in those 600 wards, the most deprived in the country, for every £1 of taxpayers' money that's going into those wards, £4 has been unlocked in community value, most of it in volunteering. Resident-led, people trust it, people want to be part of it, they're making change happen, sometimes working together with community organisers. It's all about this people-powered change. And so I want to see more of it. It goes with the grain of what the Big Lottery are all about. I can't tell them what to do because they're fiercely independent of government as you are. So maybe it's a question to ask Tony Burton.
I'm mic'd up. Can you hear me? Yeah. Really good question. I mean, the immediate answer is, why aren't you putting in an application already under something like Awards for All? So there are lots of funds available for exactly the kind of people-powered change, community centre-based activity that you've described, and you should be making sure that we are overwhelmed by the demand, because that demonstrates the power and the effectiveness of the kind of change that you're about. So get them in, read the rules, get your applications in, they fit within them, you will stand a very good chance of getting funding. And if a higher proportion of what comes through that existing process fits into this world, then that's a really good demonstration of your effectiveness, which can then move on to onto bigger things. The longer term point, you've heard, we're in the middle of a review of our strategic direction. I've told you that we need to hear from you, so you turned your listening powers around. So we're hearing very clearly what we've just seen very visibly from you this morning. So you are overwhelming us by the power of the force for change, by the movement that you have demonstrated, by the benefits of the investment that have gone in over the last few years, and you can demonstrate that you can do that on a UK scale, not just in England. So tell us, and we can respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Nick, are you okay for a couple more questions? Okay. 11? Josh, yeah.
My name's Josh. I'm from Gateshead. I'm working in Gateshead. Youth services are often a large part of what engages young people and keeps them out of crime and other antisocial behaviour. How does your government expect to maintain these services with such severe cuts to local councils' budgets?
With great difficulty. With great difficulty, and it's a big concern. I'm a very, very strong believer in young people having the opportunity to stretch themselves, to challenge themselves, to learn, to develop outside school. And for me, it's not about reducing antisocial behaviour or stopping negatives. It's all about how we, as a country, prepare young people for life and work in an age when we all know, or should know, that they're growing up in an infinitely more complex and challenging world than most of us over the age of 50 did. And for me, I feel very strongly that it's the opportunities outside school, the informal learning opportunities, and the chance to build some of the, what employers call the soft skills, is really, really important. And really high quality youth services are part of that. And you're right, because of the funding pressures on local authorities, some local authorities, not all, but many, are finding it too easy to cut or take the decision to cut youth services. And I regret that, because that wouldn't be high on my list of priorities to cut. What can we do about it? I can't tell local authorities what their priorities should be. They're accountable to the public they serve, and that's right and proper. What I can do is two things. We invest from the centre in opportunities for young people. I mentioned something called National Citizen Service, very, very important programme for us, proving to be absolutely, for many young people, one of the most powerful experiences in their life. But we're also investing in other programmes through the voluntary sector that are creating opportunities for young people locally. But what we can also do is support local authorities who believe in the value of youth services, are under funding pressure, to think a bit harder, like we talked before, about what their future strategy is and the opportunity to deliver services with less money. And we've got to be quite gritty about this and quite honest about the fact that in the past, quite a lot of the services were being delivered didn't offer very good value for money and had no evidence really to show about the benefits they were delivering for young people. And we think there's lots we can do by encouraging partnerships at the local level between businesses, voluntary sector, local authorities, to think a bit harder about how services get delivered locally. And I'm beginning to see some evidence in places like Kent and others. We're actually saying we as a local authority, I'm afraid, have got to do a bit less, but by working in new ways with partners, actually we can maintain our youth services locally, in fact, make them better. And that's the challenge. You know, we can do better with less. It's harder, but we're in that phase now. And again, there's no point sugaring the pill, but I think it's incredibly important. It's a very, very good question. There's no easy answer to it, but it's very important as a country we get this right locally, because this is about unlocking the potential in our young people and the generation coming through. And there's very few things more important than that.
Anne Toms, a host from Wellingborough, Northamptonshire in the East Midlands. We first got involved in hosting this because one of the deprived areas in our town is a community first area. And at the time when locality was focusing on community first areas within their recruitment for cohort 10, we became aware of it, and much more has flown from that. So thank you for that linkage locality between the two programmes. My question is, Minister, Many resources for the volunteering community sector focus now on new initiatives. Why is this, and why not focus more on sustaining what has worked, is still working, but now faces extinction unless it is reinvented to be presented as something new?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just take Katie's as well.
I'll shout. So, does government and the lottery recognise the difficulties charities encounter securing funding for continuation of existing successful projects and their core running costs?
Yeah. Yeah, two very good fundamental questions. We always need innovation. I think if we lose our desire to innovate and to ask ourselves questions about whether things could be improved, we will lose something as a country. You're part of an innovation. This programme is an innovation. When I started talking about it, going around, there were no shortage of people coming to me and saying, "What are you spending money on this for? We've got community development officers, we've got all the, we've got all this stuff out there already. Why aren't you giving us the money?" And there's, and the right answer to that question, well, what exactly difference did that money make? And did it make enough difference in your communities? You're here with a different energy and a different passion, yeah? But you're the result of an innovation, yeah? Innovation sometimes is good. It's often necessary. As a country, we've built our success as a country, our ability to innovate. So I make no apology for innovation and the role for government in encouraging it. But the fundamental point is right. You've got to get the balance right. And governments on the whole sometimes do prize innovation above the old and the tried and the tested, because funders are always looking for something new. All I would say is, in the work that I've done, because that's all I can really speak for, is we've tried to get the balance right. And through very, very difficult times, and Anne, you know, and many of you know the pressures under the voluntary sector, I think we've spent in excess of £220 million in various what we call transition funding, that is grants available to voluntary organisations to help them sustain what they do, to think about how they sustain themselves going forward. So that is taxpayers' money going to support the existing. Yeah, we invest in innovation and we invest to support the existing, and I think it's exactly the same for the big lottery. And how we get that balance right is up for debate, but we need both. We really need both, because we can't afford to be complacent and just think that the status quo is acceptable. It needs to be challenged the whole time, yeah? Which is what you're about as well.
My name's Alex from London. Mr. Hurd, in a recent press release you say you're for residents taking over the community and how this benefits their health. I would like to invite you to come and meet our community in West Hendon. And when would you like to come?
I've just been to Hendon to celebrate the fact that 20,000 people have volunteered for the Rugby World Cup 2015 volunteering opportunities. Trouble is, there are only 6,000 places. And the World Cup was in the Saracens Rugby Club in Hendon. But I will come again if you invite me. Which I think you just had, yeah.
And that, I think, is the end of all our questions. So, Nick, we're delighted to have you at Action Camp. It's taken us 3 years to get you here, but it was well worth it. So I'm sure everyone would like to show their appreciation.